Judge Terri Jamison. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for the invitation.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, Judge, tell us a little bit about the ranking of the court. So you hear the 10th district. So in terms of the number ranking, so just give us a general review of the folks that really don't understand what that really means.
Okay. There are 3 levels of court in Ohio. The highest level is the Ohio Supreme Court. That court is made up of 7 justices, a chief justice and 6 associate justices. The appellate court, there are 12 in the state of Ohio. The 10th district is the district that is assigned to Franklin County. But you have 12 districts around the state. There are 3 counties that have a district that only covers their county. The other counties are divided up, and each district will have multiple counties that fall under it. So we're the 10th district in Franklin County. The 8th district is Cuyahoga County, and the 1st district is Hamilton County. And then the other 9 districts are multiple county districts, appellate courts. And then your lowest level of courts is the trial court. On the trial court, you have municipal court, domestic relations, juvenile court. The general division is where you do the felonies and civil lawsuits for more than $15,000. So we're split up. So trial courts are the ones that actually take evidence, where you can go in and give testimony, and you have a decision at that level. If you do not agree with the decision, then you appeal up to an appellate court. And that's where I sit on the 10th district. We sit under 3 judge panels. So there'll be 3 judges that review what the trial court did and determine whether or not any errors were made. We are an error correction court. So if we find errors, then we send it back to the trial court to correct an error.
Ah, okay. So how long you were there?
I was elected in 2020. I took my seat July the 1st of 21. So this coming July will be 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where were you before?
I was on the domestic relations and juvenile court, and I was a judge there from January 2013 till June 30th of 2021.
Okay. I want to touch on a little bit about the juvenile. How long you were there in just juvenile?
More than 8 years.
More than 8 years. Okay. So that's what I was trying to get at. Okay. So you were there for quite a bit some time. Juvenile, in what age group is considered juvenile? Let's start with
anyone under the age of 18.
Okay. All right. And give us let me have a little bit of understanding of some of the cases that comes across your docket or your...
In juvenile court, we have jurisdiction over child custody, determination of parentage, delinquency cases, and abuse, neglect, dependency cases, juvenile protection orders. Let me think what else we had. We have bypass hearings to determine whether or not a juvenile can get a court order to have an abortion performed. We would determine if a juvenile was mature enough to get married. So there's a wide variety of cases that fall under the jurisdiction of juvenile court.
Because, when you look at Columbus is growing
exponentially.
Big time. And that also goes with challenges of different culture, diversities.
Correct.
And so you must have seen some challenging cases that come across, whether that's a religious side of it, whether that's a cultural differences of it. From where you can share with us, just to kind of sort of better help my community, things not to do and things what not to do. Can you share some of examples of what can easily be corrected that before it gets to you?
Well, first, let me give the procedure of how a case gets to court. Okay. I don't know if you're thinking about a delinquency case where juveniles have gotten in trouble, or if you're thinking about a case where the parents have a complaint that they are abusing or neglecting their children. I don't know which.
The first one.
where juveniles have gotten in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, the first thing, juveniles normally get charged in a complaint from the police if you're thinking about a delinquency, or a parent can file a complaint for unruly against a child. But those they comes in as a complaint. It goes through the prosecutor's office. They can bring it to the court. Then a magistrate hears the preliminary hearing to determine what should happen. So if a child has been arrested, it can go a couple of different ways. Depending on what the child is arrested for, a child cannot be prosecuted in the state of Ohio that is under the age of 10 years old. So if a child gets arrested and the complaint is filed, they will either take the child directly to the juvenile detention center, or they can take the child to a center for an assessment. They can call the parents if it's a minor misdemeanor type of thing and have the child picked up at that center, and then have a date to come to court later. If it's a severe case where a child's been charged with a felony level offense involving a weapon, those children have to be taken to the detention center and have to be held. So the first stage is deciding where the child is going and how the prosecution is going to go. So either event, the child will have a date to come to court before the magistrate, and that's the initial stages.
So by the time it gets to you, it's already being charged with and like you said, determining the challenges, whether that is basically how to proceed, determining where to go from here. Like you said, if it's severe challenges such as like a weapon, stuff like that, those needs to be held. And at what level or what age that the child is considered that, hey, this person needs to be tried as an adult?
You cannot try a child in the state of Ohio as an adult that is under the age of 14.
Okay.
And those are what we call discretionary if they're 14 or 15. If you're 16 or 17 years old and you use a weapon in the commission of a felony, and when I say weapon, I mean a firearm.
Yeah.
If you use a firearm in the commission of a felony offense, it is mandatory that you are charged and tried as an adult. So there's no discretion with the court. If you're 14 or 15 years old, there can be some discretion on whether or not you are bound over and tried as an adult.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I see a lot of youth, but the youth violence itself, it's getting up there, and it's very challenging that these are the things that I feel they can be easily create awareness to kind of sort of get ahead of it.
I think there are mentoring programs and things like that you can get children involved in. But it's really critical that we're observant to changes in a child's attitude, whether they're becoming rebellious, disobedient in the home, not coming home after school, not doing homework, not attending school. These are some of the things that can be noticed, that there's a change in the child's behavior.
Yeah.
I have seen some cases where a child got involved in a case where he was involved with a firearm, and it was a first offense. So there was no triggers or anything that the parent could have noticed. So I think a lot of it is how observant we are as parents and what's happening in the school. Are we seeing behaviors that are getting them kicked out of school and suspended, or in-school suspensions, those kind of things? Where are we noticing a change in behavior?
So do you take into considerations from that as well?
What do you mean?
In a sense of that, like kind of sort of looking back, the behavior that caused for the child to get into trouble, whether there is like...
Well, it depends on whether it's mandatory or a non-mandatory case. If it's mandatory, there is nothing to take into consideration.
Okay.
If it's non-mandatory, then you take into consideration all of the mitigating factors. Are they attending school? What's their grades like? How are they behaving at home? What's their prior criminal history, if they have any or don't? You look at all of those things. Do they have any substance abuse problems, mental health issues, individual education programming? There's what we call a pre-sentence investigation, which is like a background check, but it's a background check of how you're behaving in the community. How are you behaving if you're on ankle monitor or you're just released to your parents? Are you following the rules that they've set for you? All of those things are taken into consideration if it is not a mandatory bind-over situation.
Being a judge, what do you like about the most?
What do I like about being a judge? I have a love for the law.
Okay.
And I have a passion to make sure that the law is applied equitably to everyone, that due process is given to everyone, that you feel that you have fair and equal access to justice. I love that, being able to be in the room to have an impact on decisions that are made.
How do you measure the impact that you make?
How do you measure it?
Yeah.
When I was on trial court, I would look at the results on a case-by-case basis. When I'm on the appellate court and I'm reviewing a case and we're coming to a decision, I know that that decision is going to set precedent for how other cases are going to come behind it. So it's a measure. Are we putting out good case law so that other cases that come that are similar or the same as this case can be applied to those set of facts? So yes.
Is there a cases that you hope that they didn't come across your desk?
No.
Okay.
Because I'm going to apply the law.
No, I'm talking about the complexity of it, and we're all humans, right? We certain times, I mean, in certain places, you know, have you ever heard the terms like the wrong time and the wrong place?
But that's what I love about the law.
Okay.
You take the law and you apply it to the facts and the circumstances. That's where you take your individuality out of it.
Okay.
A person that can't take their individuality out of a case will not make a good judge. We cannot make law based on how we feel. We have to make law based on what the law says.
Right.
And so I think I do a good job of pulling myself out of the situation and taking the facts and circumstances of the case and applying the law to those facts and circumstances.
No, I agree with you. We feel, you know, somebody in your position, and we can only hope that the feelings and the personality is completely out of the law. But as human beings, generally speaking, it's a little bit of a challenge that sometimes that certain cases can just touch you. I wish I did not see you here.
Well, there can be a case where you wish you didn't see the person there. But that's where you have to take your bias or your thoughts out of it and say, there are cases we wish we did not have to prosecute juveniles in a certain way. I wish we did not have to do mandatory bind-overs, but it's mandatory.
It is mandatory.
And the law says it. So you have to follow the structure of the law.
Absolutely, I agree with you, and that's the whole reason.
And that's why you need and see, we don't do legislation. That's why you have to go to the State House and try to get legislation changed or implemented to deal with those cases. Because as long as the legislature says, if you're 16 or 17, you commit a felony 1 or 2 offense with a firearm, it's mandatory that you be transferred. As long as the law says that, that's what you're required to do. But if you can go to the legislature and you can lobby the legislature for a change in that law, then that's where you have to go.
Yeah.
Because the court is not the place to go to change the law.
I agree. The court is where actually the law has to be
enforced.
Exactly. I was going to say applied, yeah. So what is the difference between the juvenile court and now you're in the 10th District Court, Court of Appeal, in terms of workload, in terms of like different cases?
Workload is a lot less on the Court of Appeals. Franklin County has the busiest domestic relations and juvenile court in the state of Ohio. Each judge has over 6,600 cases that are assigned to them.
Because Columbus is growing, is that why?
Oh, yes, and because other counties are seeing a reduction in population. The next largest is Cuyahoga County.
Yeah.
So as far as caseload in courts. But when we're talking about population-wise, Franklin County is the highest population and the highest caseload.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the housing is an issue, and, there was some ridiculous number. I remember it was like 48 people are moving to Columbus every day.
We're growing at least by 5% a year, I think.
Yeah. Then,
so that taxes education, that taxes housing, it taxes busing systems, transportation. I mean, it is causing issues. Yes.
Yeah.
And affordable housing, even more.
It's even more, absolutely. Yeah, actually, the bottom you are, the more you get hit by any changes. That's actually, whether that's a legislator or whether that's the population that we're just talking about, Columbus is growing. Before, so in to get to the where you are right now, that is not, you have not been appointed, so right, you have to run.
Yes, I was elected.
So you were elected on that. So is this your first term that you're in the 10th district?
This is my first term on the 10th.
On the 10th. When did you get elected?
2020.
2020. So what is that race like for you?
It's a county-wide race.
So did you have some challenges? Were there other people running against you? Whether that's
there were two people in the race.
Okay. So what was that your first ever campaign or?
No,
okay.
I was on domestic and juvenile court.
So I did not.
First time was elected was in 2012.
Okay. So 2012 and 2020, it's like.
Well, I ran for re-election in 2018.
Okay.
So I've had 3 elections that were just countywide.
Okay.
Then I ran for the Supreme Court in 22. I was unsuccessful, but that was a statewide election.
Okay. And generally speaking, campaign, it could be it could be a challenge. And so, it can be tiring too as well, right?
Emotionally, physically, mentally.
All the above.
Financially.
So, what stand out? The most challenging times of like, hey, am I on the right path? Am I doing this the right way? You got to have some moments like that.
Oh, absolutely. Every day. Okay. You're trying to come up with a plan every day for what you need to do to be successful and win an election. My first election was in 2012. I was unknown, had never run for public office before, didn't know how to raise any funds, was on a very limited budget, only had a few volunteers, didn't have an actual structure, and really didn't know that much about how to run an election. But what I had was work in the community.
Okay.
Connection to the community. So I just counted on my community and the people that I knew. And because I had an insurance agency for 16 years, I had some marketing of my name. So I had name recognition that came from the 16 years in the insurance industry. And then I had been in private practice for 8 years as an attorney. So
that was in Ohio?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Continue.
Yeah, so in Franklin County, actually, when I was in private practice, I represented people across the state, but I had offices in Franklin, Richland, Clark counties. So I was moving around the state. So being in service to people and doing good work for people, you get a lot of name recognition, word of mouth, publicity. I didn't have a lot of money, had 1 billboard, and that was about it. So,
but that did the job, though.
At that time, yes. And then I spent a lot of time going out door to door and around different places. Well, I did not have a messy campaign. Okay. So when you are running and you have someone that you're running against and you're not, we did not attack each other's character.
Okay.
We did not attack each other. So I am grateful for that. So yeah, you don't want to run against someone that's trying to attack your character.
It's good to have somebody that you can just clean the run with it. based on, what you can bring to the table. So I'm glad you didn't have to go through that.
I am too. And even if they did it, I wouldn't do it because I just don't believe that that's necessary. I think if you're doing the job, you got the qualifications, your qualifications and what you do stand for you. I don't believe in mudslinging. I'm a person of faith, and I just don't believe that it's necessary.
Okay. And now you sit on the 10th District Court of Appeal. What is the term like? How long is it? Is it 4 years?
It feels 6 years.
So it's 6 years.
All in the state of Ohio, all judicial terms are 6 years.
6 years. Then after that, then you have to rerun if you do decide to keep
Correct.
there. Okay. I'm sure that's long ahead to look at it. But, well, I mean, you seem like somebody that who is, get their feet wet and, enjoy what they eat.
At this point, I think I'm knee deep.
What can you share with us in terms of like a wisdom and in terms of, what could benefit my community in a sense of that, that prevents anybody to come across your desk?
I think if we want to be very frank, education is essential to success.
Okay.
If I was talking to a young person today, I would tell them to focus on their education because you are going to high school, 4-year college degree, and then 3 years of law school. So education is essential to getting in these positions. After you graduate law school, you have to pass the bar, and you have to practice for at least 6 years before you can run for judge. So making sure that you keep your character clean, doing community service in your environment, learning, even doing internships in the legal community, so that you have an understanding, a foundation of what it takes. We have a constitutional guarantee in the United States that all men are created equal. And the law is the great education, and the law are the equalizers. Because if you don't have the education, it prohibits you from going forward. I really believe that education is an equalizer. So in the landmark case of Brown versus Board of Education, that case was decided in the 1950s. Prior to that, African Americans at one point were not even allowed to read, not allowed to learn to read, were not educated. And if they were educated, the school systems were not equal. Brown versus Board of Education stands for a theory of equality in education because we were living segregated. So I think for your community, knowing the law and how it applies to people of color, we were not allowed to go to school with whites. We were going to our own schools, had our own books, and we're still underfunded in urban areas. But the premise of the case is that we would have equal opportunities to education. So we have to make sure that we're telling our children, take advantage of your educational opportunities, because what you have in your head, no one can take away from you. Once you've got that diploma, once you have your 4-year degree, once you have your master's or your PhD, or if you want to go to medical school, you got an MD, or go to law school, you have a JD. Whatever it is that you do, this certificate says, I passed these qualifications. If you don't have that, you're not on equal footing with other people. So I think education has always been a challenge for people of color, and we need to make sure that we take advantage of every opportunity for education.
I was looking for some, wisdom, then I got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Education is essential to success.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time. I just wanted to have a quick conversation with you, and and it's been wonderful to have a conversation with you, and I get more than I wanted. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, Judge.
You're welcome. You're welcome.